Today, MicroStrategy shares jump after the self-proclaimed Bitcoin holding company announces a stock split. Former President Trump will speak at the Bitcoin 2024 conference in Nashville later this month. Plus, Kristin Smith, the CEO of the Blockchain Association, and Sheila Warren, the CEO of the Crypto Council for Innovation, discuss what was addressed at a meeting yesterday between crypto executives and Biden administration officials. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Mackenzie Sigalos. Major cryptocurrencies are pretty flat after new data out this morning revealed that inflation dropped slightly in June compared to the month before, and that helps with the case for the Fed to start cutting rates. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin dipped by 0.5%, holding steady above $57,000. Ether fell slightly, trading above $3,100. Solana, however, dropped nearly 2%. Now, taking a look at crypto-focused stocks, MicroStrategy shares jumped more than 2.5% as of midday after the company, which is the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin, announced a 10-for-1 stock split this morning. Now, shortly after markets opened, the stock rose more than 9.5%. MicroStrategy said that the shares will be split into Class A common stock and Class B common stock to make its stock more accessible to investors and employees. The move comes amid a lull for the price of Bitcoin, which has been stuck in a tight range for about 4 months, but which many investors expect to rebound in the second half of this year. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Crypto exchange BitMEX pleaded guilty to 1 count of violating the Bank Secrecy Act. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York announced yesterday that BitMEX admitted to violating the act by willfully failing to establish, implement, and maintain an adequate anti-money laundering program. Now, in a statement, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said that the crypto exchange's founders and a longtime employee first admitted in federal court in 2022 that the company operated in the U.S. without any meaningful AML program as required by law. Williams went on to say that as a result, BitMEX, which was one of the leading crypto derivatives platforms in the world from 2015 until 2020, opened itself up as a vehicle for large-scale money laundering and sanctions evasion schemes, posing a serious threat to the integrity of the financial system. Now, 1 count of violating the Bank Secrecy Act carries a max sentence of 5 years in prison and a fine. Next, FTX bankruptcy lawyers are pushing back against a claim that would make the estate liable for nearly $264 million. Now, for some context, Taimo Shan is a subsidiary of Jump Trading, and it reportedly invested in Serum, a decentralized crypto exchange, back in 2020, which became defunct about 2 years later following the collapse of its backers FTX and Alameda Research. Now, in this objection filed yesterday, FTX lawyers argue that Taimo Shan's purported valuation of its claim is, quote, baseless. The subsidiary of Jump Trading alleges that Alameda, FTX's sister hedge fund, agreed to lend them 800 million Serum tokens, but that the tokens were never received. In the filing, FTX lawyers argued that since Alameda failed to deliver, the loan never commenced. It goes on to say that Alameda has the right to terminate the master loan agreement at any time, which would also terminate without damages the loan at issue, which never commenced. Now, the filing also alleges that Taimo Shan may be liable to the debtors for fraudulent transfers. Last up, former President Trump is scheduled to deliver a speech at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville later this month. Now, recently, the presumptive Republican nominee has been pretty vocal about his rising support of the digital asset industry. In fact, the Trump campaign announced in May that it would start accepting crypto donations. This week, the Republican Party officially adopted a new policy platform that would seek to support crypto innovation. Bitcoin 2024 is scheduled to take place July 25th through the 27th, with Trump scheduled to speak on the last day. Meantime, crypto executives met with the Biden administration in Washington, D.C. yesterday to voice their concerns tied to the administration's regulatory crackdown on the industry. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna hosted the meeting, his staff confirmed. All right, sticking with that meeting for our main story, Kristin Smith, the CEO of the Blockchain Association, was in attendance, and I spoke with Smith about what was discussed and whether the industry's concerns were addressed by the Biden administration. Kristin, thank you so much for being here. Now, you were at a roundtable led by Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna. It included several industry players and members of Biden's administration as well. Walk me through this meeting and what you brought to the room. And can you also weigh in on how many groups were there?
Yeah, no, it was a really productive meeting that was held across the street from the White House yesterday with, I think there were probably about 25 to 30 people within the crypto industry, as well as a handful of folks from the administration. Senator Gillibrand was there as well. But Ro Khanna really deserves credit for pulling all of this together. It was a really productive conversation. I think, for a long time, the crypto industry has felt like they haven't been treated fairly by the Biden administration. And I think that, this was a really important step towards increasing the dialogue between the agencies. And we're really excited to be a part of the discussion.
So we've seen a lot of momentum toward crypto in Washington in recent weeks. How much of that do you attribute to voters that hold or believe in crypto? Is that a real force out there, even if it might just be 1 in 5 voters, like a recent poll placed it?
Yeah, no, it turns out the crypto voter is real. It's really remarkable to see. It's stronger than I even would have thought it would have been. And yes, as you noted, there was a poll from about 2 months ago that said 1 in 5 swing state voters considers cryptocurrency an important issue in the upcoming election. Very interestingly, there was another poll that came out yesterday that said of the Republican voters who were not planning to vote for Donald Trump, 13% of them are considering doing so because of his new pro-crypto stance. And so this is an incredible, powerful force. I think, if you look at what crypto is, it really represents a better future. It represents an alternative to big tech or to traditional finance. And I think people have this sense around the country that some institutions have failed them and they see crypto as an alternative. So it turns out to be a very, very powerful issue and one that is driving voter interest in the polls and probably ultimately in November.
Now, as I mentioned, this event was put on by a Democratic congressman, which, the Democrats have faced criticism that they aren't as crypto friendly as Republicans. Do you see that tide turning? And is it feeling more bipartisan in general, this topic of crypto?
Yeah. No, well, crypto tech is nonpartisan. And so I think the interest in crypto is bipartisan. We do have a couple of people on the Democratic side, mostly Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler, who have been very anti-crypto. But we have a lot of members of the House and Senate on the Democratic side of the aisle that are very pro-crypto. And I think that, as I was saying before, the issues and values of crypto align very well with those values of the Democratic Party. It's a very democratizing technology. And so, I think as we particularly head into next Congress, that we should have fairly strong bipartisan support in the House and the Senate and the White House, regardless of which party is in charge.
And we are seeing more bills moving through Congress. Obviously, Fit 21, there's an attempt to overturn Biden's veto on SAB 121. Do you feel like there's momentum on your side? Is crypto's messaging getting across here?
Yeah, well, I think the most promising legislative discussions right now are happening around market structure. This is a market regulatory framework for the crypto industry. As you noted, Fit 21 was the House's version of this market structure legislation, and it was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support earlier this spring. The ball is now in the Senate's court. There's a lot of discussions going on in a bipartisan fashion to try to figure out how they can get a vote in the Senate Agriculture Committee, which would oversee the CFTC, which might regulate crypto, as well as potentially even moving that bill to the floor. So there's certainly a pathway for activity this year. It is obviously a very narrow pathway. There's only about 45 legislative days left this year, but we're very engaged and hoping that we make some progress, because even if we don't get all the way done this year, that will be a better foundation to start from when the new Congress convenes in January.
And what other progress would you like to see from Capitol Hill on either side of the aisle?
Yeah, well, in addition to market structure, I think getting something done on stable coins is important. The president's working group, both in this Biden administration and the Trump administration last time, identified this as an area where there is no appropriate federal regulator. And so what we need is for Congress to step in and pass a regulatory framework. And the House looked at doing legislation on this already. The Senate has also expressed some interest. So those conversations are ongoing, and that's something else we would also love to see get across the finish line this year.
Sheila Warren, the CEO of the Crypto Council for Innovation, was also at that meeting with the Biden administration, and I spoke with her as well to get her take on how the meeting went and what was accomplished. Sheila, thank you for taking the time. Now, you were at a roundtable led by Ro Khanna, which included members of the Biden administration and many crypto-focused groups. What was the most important point that you were trying to get across to officials in the room?
Well, I was trying to reinforce, first of all, what all of us were saying, which is that this administration has not been particularly friendly when it comes to crypto, especially not in recent years. But also to really land the point, this is a global technology. Other countries have not waited for the United States to act. And also, this is about more than just financial services. The opportunity is much broader. It's about really architecting the internet for everybody. So making those points and connecting them together.
And how receptive has Washington been lately? I mean, we've obviously heard a lot about changing sentiment on Capitol Hill, but what have discussions with lawmakers looked like for you at the Crypto Council for Innovation?
Well, we've always taken the approach this is a bipartisan issue or nonpartisan, truly, like any technology actually is. And for us, I would say we have had more interest, I think, from folks who aren't on the core committee. So I would say most people who are on, banking committee, financial services, where this is really in their obvious purview or jurisdiction, have been interested for quite some time. But now we're seeing folks in other committees of jurisdiction who are also expressing a lot of interest. And I do think that that's forward for progress and movement that we're happy to see.
What are the biggest challenges facing the industry in Washington specifically? Now, we've, had some progress on crypto legislation, though it's not finalized yet. But what's the work that needs to be done that you're telling lawmakers about? Or, even the pushback that you might have gotten in the room during this meeting yesterday?
Well, it's not just the lack of regulatory clarity that the industry's been talking about for many years now, which really hasn't been changed or fixed. It's what that lack of clarity and the lack of congressional action has actually led to, namely regulation by enforcement by the SEC. So you have a very active and aggressive SEC and a chair, Gary Gensler, who seems to have made it a personal mission to essentially really police this industry. Whether or not that is within his jurisdiction remains an open question, according to the court. So here we are. And I think resolving that particular dilemma, figuring out with this novel asset class, this novel technology and opportunity, where does the jurisdictional authority lie? Which agency or combination of agencies is the appropriate one to be having oversight here? And I think until we land that, it's very difficult for builders to know what to do and how to move.
So to go back to that roundtable for just 1 second, I think that one of the points I saw you make was that it's important to approach crypto in a nonpartisan manner. Is that getting harder when you see Republicans garner this perception of being more crypto friendly, especially with their presumptive nominee, Donald Trump, set to speak at Bitcoin 2024?
Well, look, I don't think there's any question that rhetorically the Republicans are more supportive at this moment in time than the Democrats at a party level. But you have to remember that, as I noted, most people in this space, most Washington lawmakers have not been paying a lot of attention to this despite best efforts, right? Because it just hasn't fallen within the relevant committee of jurisdiction. They haven't felt that it's an important enough issue to frankly take a position on. So we find that most people that we talk to are still quite open-minded and have been, and are even more open-minded now that this is getting, again, more attention, more press, it's getting more prominence as an issue space that is important. So I don't feel that we've ever been in a place where this technology is not nonpartisan or even bipartisan. It's just that we haven't had, I think, the traction that we're getting in this election cycle to get folks that haven't been paying attention to sit up and realize this is really important. I better have a point of view.
Last question for you real quick. That roundtable meeting, did anything surprise you in terms of what was said in the room?
And not in the slightest. I mean, I have to say, I knew most folks in the room. I've known them for some time. I was really pleased tonally with how it went on both sides. I don't think anybody held back in expressing frustration or some of the concerns that they have about the approach that certain administrative agencies have taken, for example, the SEC. But I felt that that was met with a lot of openness, a lot of interest and eagerness and curiosity to learn more. And I felt that it was a very productive and constructive conversation. Looking forward to next steps.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today, but we'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.